Welcome to my party, we're just getting started. A life is a dream or a nightmare scarring. Hand me a drink, cause I think I'm going all in.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Red, Orange, and Blue podcast. I am your host, as always, the Mex-Canadian, and we got a very hockey-heavy podcast episode for you guys today. Not too much in the way of NFL and MLB and NBA news because the Pistons aren't worth a damn to talk about. Lions season is over and Tigers haven't started yet, so it's going to be primarily hockey. But I do want to mention the NFL Pro Bowl did happen. I didn't watch it because I don't really care about it, but from what I've seen, the Lions had a pretty decent showing. Gibbs and Laporta were two of the bigger names, as well as St. Brown had a decent showing in the games aspect or whatever. Gibbs had a good showing in the game, and then Laporta and St. Brown had good showings in the contest itself. So at least that's what I've seen. I don't care for the Pro Bowl. I care for the Pro Bowl less than I do about the NHL All-Star games. So take with that as you will. But that was about all I know of the NFL Pro Bowl. And so let's get into the hockey stuff because that's what I've got for you guys today. And we're going to start off with the Red Wings loss to Ottawa in overtime. It wasn't a bad loss per se. Both teams clearly had their minds set on the break. They were two of four teams, I think, that night that had a game to play that weren't on vacation yet. So both teams clearly had a foot out the door, and a lot of people were going into this game expecting it to be, Fight Night at the Joe 2.0 because of what happened in their last meeting against Ottawa and, the bad feelings about that. You had Klim Kostin in the lineup this time, so people were expecting it to be Fight Night at the Joe 2.0. But if you looked at the context and everything, Detroit is in the second wild card spot, and Ottawa was at the time dead last in the standings. So it was pretty apparent that Detroit wasn't going to come out and just start beating the shit out of the Senators. It just wasn't going to happen, and vice versa. I mean, if things got out of control and Detroit started running away with the game, Ottawa was 100% going to do that because they're just a bunch of little cry piss babies, and they don't know how to handle losses gracefully. But regardless, it was a 3-2 loss in overtime. Definitely one of the most boring games I've watched all season. And there's a big thing with this game. We'll get into it, but let's get into the scoring first. Daniel Sprong opens up the scoring with his 13th of the season from Veleno. It was a beautiful play. Sprong had a wide open net, essentially, from a great pass off of Veleno. Thank God we were playing Korpisalo this game, although Korpisalo came up with some big saves. But then Ottawa scores twice in the second period. Then in the third period, the captain, Dylan Larkin, gets his 23rd of the season from Comfer and Mata. And then we go to overtime, which Pinto scored his second goal of the season in overtime. But that's not what I want to talk about with overtime. Overtime is so unbelievably, incredibly fucking boring. Like, it could be fun from time to time. We seen with the I don't even remember what game it was, but it was a Detroit game, and it was really back and forth. I mean, Detroit ended up winning that game. But 95% of the time, if you don't win the opening faceoff in overtime, you're not getting the puck back unless the team decides to shoot it and you manage to get possession of it afterwards. Or your goalie covers it, you win the face-off, and then you get it back, and then you go do the same thing. It's just so unbelievably boring. Because every time, especially with man-on-man coverage, like, they designed, the NHL put 3-on-3 overtime in the game to try and create more, make it a little bit more wild, make it a little bit more crazy and entertaining for overtime. And it was when it first came out, but now it's been so strategized to no end. Man-on-man coverage, if you don't have a shot, just skate back out to the center of the ice and then regroup. It's so unbelievably boring, and there was no better example than this game. Because holy shit, the moment Detroit lost the opening faceoff, they didn't get the puck at all. Not a single time did they get the puck. And sure, that could be a test to Detroit's overtime prowess, but at the same time, it's not just them that it happens with. Every team in the league, if you don't win that opening faceoff and you don't spend your time trying to shoot the puck because you want to keep possession of the puck. Overtime is basically a one-team game. You know, it's all about possession. It's all about keeping the puck. You do not shoot unless you have the best possible scoring chance. And it's, oh my god, I just can't get over how fucking boring. That was the only thing I take away from this game, is how fucking boring overtime is. That was legitimately the only thing I could take away from this game. Because nothing else fucking happened, and God forbid anything happened in the 3-on-3 overtime to decide the fucking game. It's just, holy shit. The NHL needs to do something about it. They need to do something where, not like a shot clock, but like, in 3-on-3 overtime, if you go in the offensive zone, then you can't willingly back out of the zone, or something like that. I don't know. They got to do something, though, because it's just insane how much strategized to no end it's become, especially with man-on-man coverage. When you're on man-on-man coverage in 5-on-5, it's different because there's 10 guys on the ice vying for spots in one zone. There's chaos. People are running into each other. But when you're in 3-on-3 overtime and one goal decides the game, if you don't have the puck, you're defending the shit out of your guy. You're not going to play aggressively to get the puck away from somebody. No, you're going to stay back, defend, block shots. That's what you're going to do. You're not going to go like 5-on-5. You're not going to go pressure the guy on the blue line because at least with then, you've got the chance where they're probably going to pass it to one of their teammates who isn't covered because you've got 2 or 3 guys in front of the net blocking shots and clearing defenders. So you've got 1 or 2 other guys on your team that are open that you can get the puck to. No, with 3-on-3 overtime, if you pressure anybody, one of 2 things is going to happen. One, you're going to get outmoved, and then boom, perfect shot scoring opportunity. Or 2, they're going to back the fuck out of the zone to regroup, possibly line change, and then it's just going to go back in. It's going to be the same fucking thing. And it's just so boring, dude. I cannot watch it. And like, honestly, at this point, I prefer the shootout to overtime. Like, there are some games where overtime, yes, it could probably be the best part of the game. Detroit's had 1 or 2 of those this season. But, like, at least with the shootout, you can see players' skills with the stick handling skills on display. With overtime, it's just, okay, there's not a clear shot here. Let's back out, try again. That's all it is. It's literally the definition. It's literally the hockey version of turn it off and then on again. Like, that's all it is. So I had to get that rant out because I don't think I've ever ranted about OT publicly before. Maybe, probably on Twitter, but not in this type of format, not in a video, not in a podcast, not anything. I don't think I've ranted about overtime like this before. So that was my overtime rant. Take with it what you will. I'm pretty sure everybody shares just about the same opinion, and that overtime, 3-on-3 overtime is fucking boring. And that's what I'm sticking with there. So yeah, Detroit loses 3-2 in overtime against Ottawa. Yeah, you would like to beat a division rival in Ottawa, but Ottawa's not making the playoffs anyways. You still got a point out of it. And I'll give credit where credit's due. Ottawa, you guys finally caught up to the Columbus Blue Jackets. Congratulations. You are now tied for 15th in the conference. So, congrats. Put the banner up. Anyways, with that aside, the Red Wings have a fairly difficult schedule coming up. They've got, when they come back from the All-Star break, which we will talk about, they don't play until the 10th of February, so we've still got over a week left. We still got a full week, like 5 days left before Red Wings hockey, and then they come home. They play at 1 p.m. at home on Saturday against the Vancouver Canucks, who are... They're still killing it. They are still first in the Pacific by a pretty good margin. They are 8-0-2 in their last 10, 15-7-3 away, and 18-4-2 at home with a +9 goal differential. +59 goal differential, my bad. So it's going to be a test for Detroit. But if there's one thing I've noticed about Vancouver, watching what games I do, they are pretty much just all offense based. Very, very little defense to talk about. They generally rely on Demko to keep them in games, more or less, and that's likely what they're going to continue to do, especially against Detroit. So what Detroit needs is what they've had all January, and that is their depth scoring to come into play, but we'll talk about that in a little bit as well. But, yeah, their upcoming schedule isn't anything easy. Like I said, they got Vancouver on Saturday, then they got a 2-day break, and then it's Edmonton away. Then they've got their East Coast, like northwest road trip, essentially, where they take on Edmonton, then at home in Edmonton, Vancouver in Vancouver, Calgary in Calgary, and then Seattle in Seattle. So, realistically speaking, it'll be tough. Realistically, it's not going to be easy because unlike last time when we went there where we dummied Vancouver 2 times in a row and then beat up Edmonton and Calgary, all these teams except for maybe Calgary and Seattle are killing it right now. So, like, Edmonton's on a 16-game win streak, which is wild. I don't think I've talked about that yet. Edmonton's on a 16-game win streak, you guys. I'm pretty sure the NHL record is 17 straight, and that was Montreal, I think. So they could very well do it. Their next matchup is against the Golden Knights, if I remember correctly. So that's going to be something to watch. But if they manage to stop the Golden Knights in their tracks, then their next few games are against, I think their next 2 games are against Anaheim and LA, which is almost a guaranteed win for them at this point. And then it's Detroit in Edmonton. So there is a greater than 0 chance that Detroit could be taking on an Edmonton team that has won 19 straight. So part of me kind of wants that, because that part of me wants to see Detroit and Edmonton's win streak, because I feel like that'd be great. But at the same time, the other part of me doesn't want to see that, because that part of me knows damn well that an Edmonton that's on fire is going to beat the shit out of you. So it'll be interesting. It's gonna be fun to watch. Realistically, it'll be a fun game to watch, I believe. But with that being said, let's check in on Detroit's playoff race, because as I said earlier, Detroit currently holds the second wildcard spot in the East with 58 points. They are 6 points ahead of the team right behind them, which is the Islanders, and then 7 points ahead of Pittsburgh, New Jersey, and Washington. So it's still not like Detroit's still not running away with it. They're tied with Toronto. I mean, by points percentage, Toronto beats them because Toronto's got 3 games in hand on Detroit. But they are 1 point behind Tampa Bay, who's in third. And if they actually beat Ottawa last night, I believe they would have taken third place away from Tampa Bay going into the All-Star break. But that's besides the point. The East is still by no means set. You know, you've got you got the 4 teams essentially that you know are going to make it, being Boston, Florida, the Rangers, and the Hurricane and Carolina. But other than that, and it's anybody's game. Third place is anybody's game in either division. Philly has lost 5 straight. They're 5-5 in their last 10. So, and they've got a sub 500 record at home. So Philly, you could easily see dropping out. I think at this point, the teams in the Metropolitan Division are more looking at Philadelphia than they are Toronto and Detroit, because the Islanders are only 4 points back of Philadelphia. So I think in this point, because 58 points for Detroit and Toronto, 56 for Philly, the 2 wild card spots are higher up than in the league than Philadelphia is. So your teams like New York, Pittsburgh, New Jersey, and Washington, they're all metropolitan. So they are probably looking more to catching up to Philadelphia than they are Detroit and Toronto at this point. But that doesn't mean, like I said, doesn't mean by any means Detroit is set for the playoffs just yet. We do still need to see a bit more separation there, and it's always possible one of these teams goes on a run, and it's a good enough run for them to leapfrog other teams, stuff like that. So it'll be interesting to see down the stretch. And the primary things, a lot of people are talking about how Detroit got there and how they can keep it going. And personally, if you ask me, the biggest thing, in my opinion, is pretty obvious. It's Alex Lyon. Alex Lyon came in by sheer coincidence when, during the Sweden trip, Ville Husso had his wife went into labor. He had his daughter, so Alex Lyon was forced to come in and play the second half of the back-to-back. And I'm not gonna lie, there was a part of me that was fairly certain that they were just gonna have Reimer play both games. But I think after the Ottawa game, where he ducked away from the puck, which is still beyond me, I understand. I can give him a little bit of leeway, because even as a goalie, if I played a goalie my entire career, even if I did that, if I seen a black hardened rubber object coming at me at 90 miles an hour, I would probably duck too. And that's after I was facing the other way. So that's I can give him a little bit of leeway for that, but your whole job as a goalie is to stop the puck, dude. So I've talked about that at length. But Alex Lyon, ever since that game, he came in and flopped his dick on the table and said, "This is my net, and nobody is taking it from me." And he has proved time and time again that it is his net. He is, at this point, Detroit's bona fide number 1 goaltender, and he's only making, I think he's $850,000, $900,000 a year. So we got him for next year as well. But it does create the logjam at net comes back, because Husso came back from injury, and he was sent down to Grand Rapids for a 1-game conditioning stint, and he shut out the Belleville Senators 3-0 in his 1 game. So that asks us, that brings us to the question, where does Husso fit into all of this? And personally, I think Husso becomes the backup. I don't know. I think it becomes a Husso Lyon net, more or less. I think Lyon will get the majority of the starts, but I do think it'll be more of a 1A, 1B between Husso and Lyon. And all we need is Husso to come back and play average goaltending. Just if he can get, because I think the league average in goaltending is like 908 or something like that. If he can do that for the rest of the season, and Lyon keeps playing at his pace, then I think that's the recipe to get Detroit into the playoffs. And a lot of people will say, well, Husso, I've seen a lot of people say Husso was bad this year and he sucks and stuff like that. I even have seen somebody say he's an AHL goaltender, which is beyond the dumbest thing I've ever played or seen. And their whole reasoning was because he has, a sub 900 save percentage with the Red Wings. And what they didn't take into account at all is, like, they were bona fide, just look at the numbers and see what's going on, and then the ice test and whatnot. But they clearly just had tunnel vision on Husso and didn't look at the rest of the team, because if they did, they would know that the first half of the season, Husso was fantastic. And then he got injured and came back. He wasn't the same. And at the time he came back after his injury as well, the team wasn't the same. Half the team had pretty much been gone. Like, that team had Taro Hirose on it, if you want to know how bad things got. It had Taro Hirose on the team. So that was how bad the team got after, right around the trade deadline when Husso came back. So very few goaltenders in the league can hold that caliber of a team up to the playoff pace that they had. But what a lot of people seem to be forgetting is that before Husso got injured this year, he was coming back to form. He played some, like in the 2 or 3 games he played before he got injured, he looked good. Like, he looked like the Husso of the first half of last year good. And I don't say that lightly. Yeah, he had that boggle with Carolina that ultimately cost the Red Wings that game. But at the end of the day, in that same game, he kept it close regardless. Like, that game was pretty much because Detroit couldn't shoot the fucking puck to save their lives, which is another thing I want to press on. Detroit has, I know it doesn't look like it right now, but Detroit has a plethora of shooting talent. Like, just look, just look at the top 6 real quick. DeBrincat, Larkin, Kane, Raymond, hell, you could probably put Comfort and Perron in there too, but they're not really shooters. So let's just go with Larkin, DeBrincat, Kane, and Raymond. Top 6, 4 incredible shooters right there. And then go to your bottom 6. You've got Fabry, you've got Veleno, you've got Sprong, you've got who else is down there that can shoot the puck like it's no one else's end. Kopp's got a sneaky good shot. Like, Rasmussen's got a sneaky really good shot. Like, they've got so many weapons and shooting depth, but they are so keen on just not shooting it when they can. It's almost like the team is either in this battle with themselves, like internally, each player is internally battling with themselves to either not be selfish or be too generous. Like, there were times where, like, I think one of the best ones that I seen was probably I think it was the Carolina game, where it was a 2-on-1 with Sprong and Comfort, and Sprong had the puck, and he could have shot that thing perfectly, and it probably would have gone in because it was fucking Aranta in net. But no, he opted to stop and wait for Comfort to show up, letting the defense close in, and just giving up pretty much every opportunity that they had to shoot there. That was one of the worst ones I've seen from the team, and it just there's a plethora of them. And it's something that I don't know why. Like, I don't think anybody's been able to put their finger on why the team just doesn't like to shoot the puck. Is it I don't know if it's a systems thing where, Lalonde and the coaching staff there are, Lalonde's obviously a defense first coach, but I don't know if there's another system in place where it's like, all right, we're not just going to shoot the puck. We're going to make plays, pass it around, and look for that perfect shot. And a lot of games, you just can't do that. Like, especially games against Carolina, Vegas, hell, at this point, Edmonton. Top tier teams like that, you just can't do that. Florida's another good one. You just can't do that because of their defense. A lot of games, you just have to shoot it at the net and see what the fuck happens. Shoot it at the net, crash the net, hopefully pick up a rebound. Hell, get somebody in front of the net, for Christ's sake. This team was home to one of the greatest net front presences ever in Thomas Holmstrom, and you just don't do it. Like, it is a tried and true position for the Red Wings history. Like, you can put somebody like Rasmussen or Fischer. Fischer's proven he's been good at it lately, but you can put Rasmussen there. You can put, hell, Fabry there has been pretty decent at it. Just get somebody in front of the fucking net to pick up a rebound or just screen the goalie. Stuff like that is simple hockey, but they just don't do it. And it's cost them a lot of potential goals and scoring chances. So I don't know where the problem lies. It's got to be coaching. Realistically, with that, it's got to be offensive coaching. And that's something I think needs to be adjusted with the team. But on top of that, I want to get into some more player talks and topics. And the first one being Mo Seider. I've seen a lot of people, and I'm going to get on my Mo Seider pedestal here 100%, because especially on Twitter, there is a lot of Mo Seider slander going around, and I will not have it. Mo Seider has been fantastic defensively, and a lot of people are starting to understand and know that Mo Seider, more than any other defenseman in the league, legitimately more than it doesn't even come close, he is getting the toughest minutes out of any defenseman in the league, and it's not close whatsoever. Even with Jake Wallman, he's getting like 2% more tougher time than his defensive partner. And a lot of people are like, well, they gotta, if they want him to produce, people are basically calling him a fraud or a bust or him having a down year. It's like, no, he's literally getting the hardest minutes. And then people equate that to, well, then it's his deployment is bad. Then Lalonde needs to fix his deployment and give him, one or two easier shifts. And that does happen, like, more often than people like to say. Sorry about that. But they don't understand that if you take Mo Seider away from that from the top lines, then who's going to go up against the Connor McDavids of the league, the Nikita Kucherovs, the Nathan McKinnons? You can't put guys like Olli Maatta and Justin Hall and Jeff Petrie and Shane Gostisbehere against those guys. You just can't, because they're going to get fucking cooked every which way. And I love all those guys. I love Olli Maatta. Jeff Petrie is... there's a lot of Jeff Petrie slander, and I will not accept that anymore. Justin Hall, while he had a few fuck-ups in the Ottawa game, I still think he's a solid third-pairing defenseman. Jeff Petrie and Shane Gostisbehere, they're not defensive defensemen, really. And Olli Maatta, he's the epitome of defensive defenseman, but he still can't really defend against Connor McDavid that well. So, because there's very few defenders in the league who can in the first place, and Olli Maatta is definitely not one of them. So it is upsetting when I see it, because clearly most of these people just look at the analytics and look at these horribly analyzed stat charts on Twitter. Like, there are several accounts that make these stat cards and stuff like that who show all the numbers, stuff like that, and they use that to judge people. And it's like, personally, don't ignore the analytics. You can find out a lot of good things from the analytics and come to good conclusions. But personally, for me, the eye test is the primary thing that matters, and the eye test shows that Mo Seider is one of the best defensive defensemen in this entire league. Sure, his counting stats may not be where you want them to be. He's likely not going to hit his rookie year numbers, and a lot of people are equating that to saying, oh, he's already peaked in his rookie years. No, you got to take into account the kid's 22 years old. Like, he's literally 1 year older he's literally 1 year past the age of being able to drink legally. And you're saying he's already a bust or he's already peaked? It's like, no, dude, he's still got his hockey IQ and mentality peak to come. He's still got his prime. And if he's this good in his early years, then imagine what he's going to be like when he's 25, 26, 27, 28. Like, just imagine that. And imagine if Detroit gets a more competent D-core behind him to where he can play easier minutes and get those counting stats up. I think if if the team's defense gets overall better, and you have, like, once you get a second pairing of probably, I don't know, Edvinsson and Axel Sandin-Pellikka, just for an example, then I think once you get something like that, then you end up getting into Seider getting more easy minutes, and Seider will likely at that point start getting into Norris conversations, and maybe, who knows, maybe he wins one, I don't know. But the fact of the matter is, Seider had the unfortunate cause to come in the league just as Cale Makar and Quinn Hughes are reaching their primes. So It'll be tough for Seider to win the Norris. I'm not saying he's guaranteed to win one in his career, but he's definitely going to be a top 10 defenseman in this league once the team around him overall gets better. Because a lot of people use that as like an excuse to call him bad. It's like, well, if you need to rely on your defensive partner or your team to play defense, then you're not good. Stuff like that. It's like, no, fucking people look at guys like Nicholas Lidstrom and whatnot and say they didn't need the team around them to be good. Look at the team that was around them. Like, if you look at Nicholas Lidstrom and Nick Kronwall, look at the team that was around them. They had two of the best two-way forwards in the entire history of hockey in Pavel Datsyuk and Henrik Zetterberg on their team. And not to mention, they had Chris Draper, Nicholas Backstrom, Darren McCarr. They had so many people on that team that could play defense and score goals that it 100% elevated. Do you honestly think that somebody like, let's say, just for an example, Nicholas Lidstrom, if he was on this year's San Jose Sharks, do you honestly think he would reach peak Lidstrom numbers? No, not even close. Like, I mean, yeah, Erik Karlsson reached 100 points last season, but Erik Karlsson's basically just a fucking forward. The difference between him and Lidstrom are that Lidstrom was a defenseman and played defense. Erik Karlsson can't play defense worth shit. But yeah, I'm sick of the notion that Seider is a fraud or a bust, stuff like that, because the team around him isn't incredible defensively. Sure, they've locked it down more defensively now, but just because he's getting the toughest minutes and whatnot, his counting stats aren't there. And if his counting stats aren't there, according to the unofficial NHL rules, I guess, of being a good player, you're automatically a bad defenseman. That's a notion I cannot get behind. As a defenseman myself, I cannot get behind the notion that you have to put up fucking 50, 60 points a season to be considered an elite defenseman in the NHL. That's just not how it should be. Defensemen are there to defend. It's literally in their name, defenseman. That is literally their job description. It is not defense-ish men. No, it is defensemen. You're there to stop the other team from going to your end and scoring. That is your job. Your job is not to take the puck from your end and go to their end and score. That is not your job. Sure, there are defensemen who can do that, who also can play defense. You know, Quinn Hughes can't play defense very well either. Cale Makar, really good at it. And there's been defensemen in NHL history that can do it as well. But the fact of the matter is, when you get down to the nitty-gritty of it, defensemen are there to defend and not to play forward. And that is my rant on that. Let's get into something a little bit more not ranty. Raymond. I want to talk about Lucas Raymond because currently he is sitting third in points for Detroit with 13 goals, 28 assists, 41 points in 50 games. He's on point to have a 70 plus season. So it's good for him. That's exactly what we were hoping Raymond would do. A lot of us, I think, expected Raymond to be more of a goal scorer, but if you ask me personally, I think he's got more of the tools to be a Perron replacement in the top six. Because if you look at the way he plays, he definitely plays more of a Perron style than, say, an Alex DeBrincat style or a Patrick Kane style. I think Lucas Raymond is going to end up replacing Perron in protecting the puck, being able to make plays, and when called upon, get a goal or two. I think that's going to be Raymond's role. I think Raymond still has the potential to be a 30 goal scorer. He's got the shot to do it, but in the end, I think he's going to end up being a Perron archetype, essentially. And we've seen Perron has the ability. Perron scored 25 goals last season, I'm pretty sure. 24 goals. Yeah, he had 24 goals, 32 assists from 56 points in 82 games. So it is very possible that Raymond becomes a Perron type, and that is incredible. If that's able to happen, I will 100% take that for Raymond, because arguably Raymond's a better player than Perron. I say arguably because Perron's got the age on him and stuff like that, so it's not really easy to compare the two. But regardless, I do think he becomes the new Perron for Detroit, at least, and it's just going to be interesting to see how he develops with that, because there is still a very good potential that he becomes more of the Alex DeBrincat, Patrick Kane archetype than the David Perron archetype. But personally, I think he's more destined to be the Perron archetype. So yeah, and then this is all culminating in the reasons why Detroit is currently in the playoffs right now. Or at least the playoffs, but I shouldn't say in the playoffs. But they're right now, like I said, sitting in the second wild card spot. So that brings up a lot of talk about the trade deadline. Are the Red Wings buyers? They shouldn't be sellers. If they're in this position by the trade deadline, 100% they're not sellers. So it gets to, okay, well, are they buyers? Well, that's a tricky thing, because in my opinion, if you're in a wild card spot, you should not be a buyer. You should not be moving assets to get assets back. Being a wild card team is that weird spot where, especially this year, where it's more of a judgment of how the teams performed around you as well as how you performed. Right now, Detroit obviously has performed very well, and the teams around them have not performed very well. So it's, like I said, I think they should not be either. Maybe you can move something to get a decent piece back, but at the same time, the way the roster is constructed, I can't see them doing anything realistically unless it's like a player trade. You give, just for an example, I'm not saying I want this, but just for an example, say you move Christian Fischer and, I don't know, just throw a name out there, Oldie Mata, and you get a goal scorer. You get like maybe a Frank Vetrano back or something like that. You're not going to move two players to get Frank Vetrano, but you could probably move Fischer and Vetrano for one, more with maybe a pick in there. Actually, you'd probably have to throw in like a second or a third round in there. But Detroit is not at the point where they can start giving up assets to get players back, because their prospects pool right now is filled to the brim, and especially with guys as talented that are starting to show up, guys like Marco Kasper, Carter Mays, or Sebastian Kosas having a good year in Grand Rapids, and you got Nate Danielson, who's killing it in Portland right now. Albert Johansson's doing really well. Antti Tuomisto's surprisingly playing really well. Simon Edvinsson and Jonathan Berggren, they should be on this team this year, but they're not, so hopefully they're on. Edvinsson and Berggren should 100% be on this team next year, by the way. So there's so many guys in the AHL that you can make a case that could make the team. So Detroit should not be moving any pieces for anything else that doesn't come with term. They should not be moving for rentals. They should not be looking for anything other than someone who will move the needle for this team, but also has some term on them. So that's just my thought on that. Realistically, I don't think they're moving anybody. I think they're happy with the team that they have now. When Kane comes back, there's going to be an interesting dilemma, because then you got to healthy scratch somebody. I think the obvious choice for a lot of people is Klim Kostin, but Kostin's been pretty decent. So, and you can't really split up the Kopp, Rass, Fisher line, because they've been really good. You can't really take anybody up out of the top six. You're probably moving somebody down. So realistically, if you ask, you can't. Everyone's been performing so well on the team that it's hard to pick somebody out. It's a good problem, but it's difficult to pick somebody out of the lineup and scratch them. I think ultimately it's going to end up being Klim Kostin, because then you're probably just going to move Fabry down to the fourth line with Sprong and Veleno. But yeah, it's going to be, it's not a decision I envy for Lalonde whatsoever. But yeah, and with that, I want to talk about Detroit's depth scoring again, because it's here to stay. Apparently, we've seen that in their last few games. Sprong's been killing it. Fabry, Veleno, they've been creating opportunities. Rasmussen, Fisher, and Kopp have become this domination line of pure adulterated hate, I think. Like, that line goes against all laws of nature, physics, any law you can think of, it goes against it. Like, it's like, well, not any law, like law of nature and stuff like that, any law of science, really. It just goes against that line on paper. Should just be like the most boring line in NHL history, but it works. I can't complain, and they're not boring whatsoever to watch. Fisher, he gets in there like he's such a nice, happy-go-lucky locker room guy that it's weird to see him go into the corners and just start shoving people, go in front of the net, spraying snow in goalies' faces. Like, it's fantastic to watch that. Rasmussen is becoming a truly good power forward who's being able to protect the puck with his body and move guys out of the way to get the puck somewhere, and his playmaking abilities starting to show. And then Kopp's just there as, like, on that line, Kopp is their shooter. Like, Kopp is their goal scorer on that line, and it is so wild to say that. That's not a sentence I thought I would ever speak, but yeah, Kopp has surprised me quite a bit in the second half of the season so far. After the very big drop that he took offensively after the first, like, month and a half of the season. So that's going to be interesting to see how that unfolds. And with that, I also want to talk about, who do the Red Wings re-sign? You know, we're in that time where teams start re-signing guys and whatnot. So I'm interested, and I think out of the entire team right now, there are really only two guys that you should move heaven and earth to try and re-sign. And that's Patrick Kane, Daniel Sprong. Now, I know a lot of people are going to say Shane Gostisbehere, but realistically, no. If you sign Shane Gostisbehere, then that just means another year of Edmonton in Grand Rapids, or you got to do something else. And plus, Shane Gostisbehere is going to, with the season he's having right now, because he's right now? I think leads the team in assists, or that Raymond? Raymond leads the team in assists, but yeah, it's oh Jesus Christ, that's what I wanted. He's got 25 assists, 7 goals, 32 points, and 49 games played. So he is definitely an offensive guy. Obviously, we knew that, but it's not. He's definitely going to want something bigger than what is he getting paid, $4 million right now a year? I think he's getting paid $4 million. I can't remember the exact contract, but he's going to want something bigger than that, and I don't think Detroit should really go for it. Personally, I think that money could go to signing Seider, Raymond, and then re-signing Sprong and Kane. I think if we're talking how much these guys should be getting, we've talked about the Seider. I'll talk about the Seider Raymond contracts in a different episode, but if we're talking extensions, I think Kane, we could make do with $4 million for 2 years, and then with Sprong, you could probably go for another 2-3 years at probably right around the same amount. He's probably going to be a third liner for the entire time he's here, so maybe $3.5-4 million. Yeah, that would probably be about right for 3 or 4 years. I wouldn't mind a 4x4 for Sprong, realistically, but yeah, I'm interested to see what Eisman does, because as much as I would love for them to re-sign Fisher, but I don't think it's going to happen, because Fisher's a guy you can find really anywhere, and we don't know if this season is going to be an outlier for him when it comes to his chemistry with Kopp and Rasmussen and his current output. So that's my thoughts on them, on who Detroit should re-sign. And it's just a fun time to be a Red Wings fan. Realistically, there's a lot of they're really fun to watch. There's a lot of scoring on the line in the game. Well, in all their games really now. Well, not lately. They've been playing really solid defensively, so there haven't been very many high scoring games like there was at the first part of the season where they were scoring like 5 goals a fucking game. But regardless, it's fun to watch. The depth is definitely moving the needle in the right direction, and it's only going to get better after the All-Star break once Patrick Kane comes back. We'll have Ben Sherratt back as well. Ben Sherratt and Patrick Kane will definitely help this team. Not a sentence I thought I would ever be saying. But, yeah, and with that, well, actually, there's a stat that just came out today in that Detroit has, because this goes along with the depth scoring, Detroit has the most goals out of every NHL team this year. Has the most goals by players not with their team, not with the team last season. So Detroit has most of their team was not with them last season. But if we're looking at it, they posted a graphic on Twitter. As it stands right now, there's 63 goals by players on Detroit right now that were not with them last season. DeBrincat with 18, Sprong with 13, Compher with 11, Kane with 7, Ghost with 7, Costin with 3, Fisher with 2, Petrie with 2. So it's definitely interesting, and it's really exciting. Like I said, there's this depth. A lot of these guys realistically are playing above their average. Daniel Sprong, he scored, 23 or like 27 goals or something like that with Seattle last season, playing like 11 minutes. So this is on pace with him. DeBrincat obviously makes sense. Compher, he had a really good season with Colorado last year, so that makes sense as well. But, Kane's a superstar, but Ghost, he had a down year last year, so he came back hard. Costin, Fisher, Petrie, they're all playing above their averages right now. So, like I said, it's going to be a tough decision to see for Yzerman to see who he signs and who he doesn't sign. So let me know what you guys think about any of that. You can let me know on Twitter and stuff like that. So with that, we are going to get into our prospect profile for this week. And this week, it was voted. We had a two-way tie for this one. It was between Edvinsson and Trey Augustine. So I put it up to a second vote between the two, and Trey Augustine won by a single vote. So we are talking about Trey Augustine today. Trey Augustine, who was obviously drafted this year, and not this year anymore, 2023 draft by Detroit, 41st overall in the second round. And this was a very highly touted pick by pretty much everybody. He's from South Lyon, Michigan, so he's a Michigan guy. The biggest thing against him was that he's only 6'1". I know, only 6'1". But 6'1's really small for a goaltender, obviously. But he has all of the skills to back it up. From everything I've seen, he doesn't track the puck incredibly, but he has an incredible technical foundation. Like, he is so sound technically that he doesn't have to track the puck because he just instinctively knows where he should be during any given play, and it's showing this season. He plays in the NCAA with MSU right now, teammates with Red Savage. And in 25 games, he has a .299 goals against average and a .914 save percentage with a 16-6-2 record with 3 shutouts. Yeah, he's kind of killing it. Then in the USA, in the World Juniors with Team USA, he realistically I feel like he should have been goalie of the tournament, but that he only played 4 games in the tournament, which was weird. You would think they would switch between him and Fowler, but it's whatever. In his 4 games, he had 175 goals against with a .936 save percentage, and he won all 4 games he played. So it's definitely something, a guy to keep your eye on for Detroit, because if Costa, because like I said, Costa's been having a pretty good year in the AHL. He's probably going to be down there for another year or two. But if Costa isn't able to get to where he should be in time, Trey Augustine's right there to take his spot. And I think Detroit's genuinely looking at him to potentially do that. As much as I like Carter Gylander, I don't think Detroit's really looking at him to potentially take that spot from Kosa. But if you really look into it, Detroit's got some good goaltenders, and Trey Augustine is one of those top ones. So I'm really excited for him. I think that he will inevitably he's going to be in the NHL. One way or another, he's going to be in the NHL. Whether that's if Kosa works out, then, you can move Trey Augustine to get a really good thing, get a really good talent back. Or you can try and find some way to keep both of them, which would be great. But if they both play to what their ceilings are supposed to be, those are going to be two very difficult goaltenders to keep paid on the same team. So, sorry, I got the hiccups there. I have the hiccups still. So it's going to be in... Give me a second. Okay, sorry about that. Those hiccups just would not go away, and they probably still haven't gone away. But it hasn't happened in a hot minute, so we're going to try and ride through it. Because we've only got one more thing left on the agenda, and that is they haven't gone away. That is the Elias Lindholm trade between Calgary and Vancouver. This was a big one, and honestly, if you ask me, I think Calgary probably won this trade. If you're asking me in terms of win-losses, now obviously it's probably not good to calculate how teams winning and losing trades, but this is the West Coast, so I don't give a fuck. So if you guys weren't aware, which you probably should be at this point, Vancouver got Elias Lindholm, and in turn Calgary got Andrei Kuzmenko, Hunter Berzustics, something like that. Hiccups, sorry. Johnny Yermo, and a 2024 first-round pick, and the most important piece, the conditional 2024 fourth-round pick. And, yeah, this, I think, Calgary won, because Elias Lindholm is likely not going to stay in Vancouver. So this seemed like a really big overpay for someone who is more or less a rental. I think Lindholm still got a year or two left on his still got like 2 years left on his contract or something like that. But that was a big price. That was a big price to pay for him, and it does nothing but help both teams. But yeah, especially a first round pick with 3 players, that's a lot. And Vancouver's never been known to make trades that always win. They always win. We seen that with Detroit last year when Yzerman traded with Vancouver for Hronek, and they got the Islanders pick that Vancouver got from the Islanders through the Horvat trade. These hiccups aren't going away, by the way, so deal with it. So, and that pick ultimately turned into Axel Sandin-Pellikka. So, all in all, exciting time in hockey. Obviously, the All-Star game happened. I didn't watch it at all. And all I know is that DeBrincat had a good showing. So, that's all I know. That and Kucherov couldn't be fucking bothered to show up really at all. He was there, but he wasn't there. So, that's going to be all for this episode, you guys. Sorry for the bit of a jumbled mess that everything was, and the hiccups. The hiccups just kind of came out of nowhere. They're still here. But yeah, sorry for the jumbled mess today. I've been doing a lot of back and forth, and this was the last thing I had to do today, so my brain's not everywhere, plus the hiccups aren't helping. So before it happens again, thank you guys so much for tuning into the Red, Orange, and Blue podcast. Please, if you could, leave a rating for it to help cure my hiccups, and follow me on Twitter at @_MexCanadian, and the Red, Orange, and Blue podcast at RORB pod. And yeah, you can vote for the prospect profile for that week. But anyways, thank you guys for tuning in, and I will talk to you guys next time. Adios.
Welcome to my party, we're just getting started.